This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Over the last 48 hours, there have been a ton of articles talking about Harry wanting to move back to the UK, or he's searching for a place in the UK because he misses his friends, and this is the condition that Meghan has in order for her to come back. I mean, just puff piece after puff piece coming out. Listen to some of these headlines. Prince Harry is looking for a house in the UK. Has he had enough of his life in the United States? Prince Harry looking for a permanent UK home as anti-Meghan Markle friends avoid LA. Prince Harry searching for a home and his friends are not visiting over rifts with Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle allegedly has one major condition for Prince Harry before she makes return to UK. And then sprinkled here and there are the articles about how King Charles wants to see his grandchildren and doing it over Zoom is not good enough. I mean, all these articles directing Harry to go back to the United Kingdom. If I didn't know any better, it really does sound like Harry's setting the stage to quietly leave the United States. It's been a little over 2 months since the Department of Homeland Security complied with the court and turned over the relevant information on Harry's visa. Right now, everyone is waiting for him to come back and say, yes, we can release the information and it doesn't violate Harry's privacy. Or he can come back and say, no, I can't release it because it will violate his privacy. And if that's the case, then perhaps maybe that's why it's taking so long, because he has to give justification. I do get the sense that Harry is on an A1 visa, but from all these puff pieces that we're seeing, I'm sensing that that time is about to come to an end. I believe it's a main driver for why Harry is appealing his security case with the UK government to get this IPP status back. Now, I did this video about 3 months ago going over the full transcript of the argument that was being heard in the court system about Harry's visa. This is what they were trying to deliberate on, the possibility of Harry having a diplomatic visa. But you agree then that other than having a diplomatic visa and going through the waiver process, other than those two options, the only way the Duke could have entered would have been to lie on the form. Well, it's possible that a consular officer just may not have sought an admission, but that's unlikely. Right? The likely ways he could have been admitted are diplomatic visa, waiver, lied on the form. Yes, that's right, Your Honor. That's really the universe. Yes. But plaintiff says each of those things raises a red flag. Diplomatic visa, I'm just putting words in plaintiff's mouth, is kind of preposterous to consider given the current relationship between the Duke and the family. So that's diplomatic visa. Waiver, the problem with waiver is they have experts that are unrebuted that say it takes a really long time. So you have to imagine that that process, if it was to work to allow him to enter in March of 2020, had to start before that. But that seems highly inconsistent with how he articulates what they did in the book from Canada, COVID, January, February 2020 through March 2020. Yeah. And so, if he sought a waiver and was granted very quickly, plaintiff says that would be anomalous and could imply preferential treatment. Then the third option, the third primary option, is he didn't check the box. He didn't admit to drug use. And if that's the world we're in, plaintiff says, well, okay, he entered, but then the government should have done something thereafter because it has highly public admissions to suggest that the form was inaccurate. And the government typically, when it gets wind of people who lied on their immigration forms, does something about it. And if the government hasn't done anything here, that's also at least a red flag. So what is your responses to that suite of, I'll put it this way, the suite of red flags that plaintiff raises in response to the options you've articulated? Sure. Well, with respect to lying on the form, I mean, that goes through various levels of speculation. They have no factual basis or any basis to believe that he got in that way and that the government is somehow pulling its punches for somebody who lied on a form. Doesn't that mean that it's then the very likely scenario here is that he sought a waiver? I wouldn't say it's very likely. I mean, it's most likely. I wouldn't say that either. I mean, it's possible for him to have a diplomatic visa. He is still a member of the British royal family and still has the title Duke of Sussex. I know he's formally stepped down from his roles, but he is still a government official in the United Kingdom by his birth and by his title. Does he have a privacy interest in the fact that he holds a diplomatic visa? Yes, he does. As a matter of fact, we would be prohibited from disclosing that because that's visa information. I cited the statute in my brief. The likelihood of Harry having an A1 visa is pretty high. I believe that this was the easiest path that they took, and since then, he has been extending it. That's just my opinion. So, in theory, ambassadors, diplomats, public ministers, and other diplomatic personnel can apply for this A visa. There's an A1, A2, and then for the employees, an A3. Now, we all know the way that this is supposed to work is anyone who's receiving this A visa status, they're coming over here representing their government. Qualifying for A1 status for the most part is someone who's head of state or government, is an ambassador, consular officer, public minister, or other government official that will be serving at a foreign embassy, someone who's government minister entering to serve for official activities, a delegation representative from the European Union or African Union, or any immediate family member of a person already in valid A1 status. So back in 2020, when Harry was Mexiting, I would think Fiona McElwim, who was working on behalf of the Sussexes during this whole Sandringham summit, was able to secure this diplomatic note. Remember, she was the diplomatic specialist that they hired. All the other documentation needed or required was a valid passport, history of international travel made in the last 5 years, including to the United States, data about their education and work resume. But this is the important piece. Even with an A1 visa, you still have to fill out the Form DS-160 that asks the question on whether you do drugs or not. So Harry had to file paperwork, and when I say paperwork, it's this electronic system that everybody has to use. So here's the portal, and it says right in that paragraph in the middle, other people can assist you with your visa application. Note that under U.S. law 22 CFR 41103, you must electronically sign and submit your own application unless you qualify for an exemption. And this is not the waiver that they're talking about. This is like for someone who is blind or deaf and can't read. Even if someone else helped you complete the application, you, the applicant, must click the sign application button or your application may not be accepted. One way or another, Harry had to fill this out, and I could honestly see Harry shifting the blame over onto someone else because maybe there was someone at the palace who went ahead and did this admin work and said, here, go ahead and click and sign. Even if that was the case and he tried to shift the blame over onto someone else for not answering correctly, it's still going to fall on his shoulders because he is the one who ultimately had to click and sign. Regardless of what, Harry had to submit this. Doesn't matter if you're a diplomat or head of state, this is an electronic form that everyone has to go through. Wait, I take that back. I think the only people that are exempt from filling out anything is the UN. And if you have this UN passport, I think it's like your free pass to anywhere in the world. Don't quote me on it, but I believe that that passport is the all access passport. When we look at the processing turnaround time for getting an A1 visa, it's almost immediate, as opposed to, let's say, entering in on a work visa or just a regular tourist visa, take maybe a couple weeks. Here, it's instantaneously, which leads me to believe that, yeah, Harry did lie on the form and didn't answer honestly, because I believe it would have stopped the system and he would have either not been granted it or he had to go down the path of filing this waiver, and this waiver process takes a longer time, which is something that the Heritage Foundation challenged based in the time frame that was described by both Harry and Meghan on when they Mexited and fled to the United States. The time frame does not allow for the waiver process to play out. Which brings us to the case with Prince Harry. The question is, does he have a diplomatic or an official passport? It depends, because when he left in 2020, it was before the new passports came out. And at the time, if you had a diplomatic passport, it would be this maroonish color. As of 2022, the new passports with diplomat and official are now back to this dark blue. Now, Harry's passport looks extremely new here. I can't tell if there is the embossed diplomat or official in the top there. I'm suspecting that it's not. And the reason why I say that is because the royals do not have embossed on their passports diplomat or official. And how we know this fact is because of Charles and Diana. So this is what the British passport looked like back in the 80s with the dark blue, it almost looks black, hardback. How we know that it's not diplomatic is because it's not the red maroon color, because that also was still the color for these diplomat passports. And on top of it, you don't see the word diplomat anywhere on the front cover of this passport. Now, this I found pretty cool. When you look at the nationality, it says Prince of the Royal House, as opposed to British citizen or British subject, citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies. Now, this is what Diana's looked like. As you can see there, nationality, Princess of the Royal House. Also, it's a dark blue hardback. No evidence that says she's a diplomat or official, but was still able to get diplomatic visas. So here is a picture of one of Diana's visa pages in which it shows that the visa that was granted was diplomatic and it was entry into New Guinea. The date was August 15th, 1984, 1 month before Prince Harry was born into the world. Here are a couple of pictures from this trip. As you can see, Diana heavily pregnant, but not as pregnant as Meghan. Exactly 1 month later, the ginger prince crowned his ugly-looking head, and the rest is history. I can't believe that these photos were taken 40 years ago. And being that Diana sadly passed away at such a young age, it's almost as if she's like frozen in time. She's still very much a part of culture, and what we see is her just remaining eternally young. Anyhow, I digress. Getting back to Harry's visa. It is possible for Harry to have a passport that looks like this, but inside, most likely, Harry's visa looks like this. But instead of it saying A2, it says A1. I was really lucky to find this photo. This is an actual real A2 special visa that was issued by the US government. This guy's not even a governmental official, but was able to finagle something with the Kenyan government in order to get this special visa for this CEO. It's almost a given and a high probability that the same finagling happened with Prince Harry. So what's so special about having an A1 visa? But before I tell you, if you've learned something so far, please do the kid a favor and help her out by hitting that like button so this can reach more people. I'm always appreciative of the support that you give me. So what's so special about the A1 diplomatic visa? Well, for starters, they can come and go as they please in the United States for an unlimited time while the visa is in effect and valid. I think the most important benefit for Harry is that holders won't be charged, prosecuted, or tried in any court in the United States if, let's say, they commit a crime. And that's because of this thing called diplomatic immunity. They also get other perks such as expedited processing of the requested visa without priority dates or waiting times. As I said earlier, the spouse and children of the visa holder also receive an A1 or A2 visa. Now, I don't think that's the case with Meghan because Meghan is already an American citizen. But I think that she doesn't like seeing Harry have all these benefits and immunity while she is an American citizen and also up to no good as well. Hence the reason why I believe this is the real push for this IPP. Now, I suspect that Harry has been on this A1 visa and has worked with the Department of State, which we all know he has lots of contacts with the Department of State, that I don't think in the beginning was too hard to get. I would say maybe even in the early days when the Queen was alive, before Harry burned all those bridges, he still had support from the family in order to handle these affairs. I definitely don't think that's the case now, especially seeing all these puff pieces coming out of Harry wanting to move back home to the UK. It leads me to believe that he is running out of options, and whatever his visa may not be anymore, in my opinion. There's a reason why Harry's lawyers were pushing for his security case to be decided upon by the end of July, or at least moved forward by the end of July. I don't think it's because they didn't have the bandwidth because they were going to be busy in the later months. I truly believe it has something to do with this. But thankfully, the justice was not giving Harry any kind of privilege to jump the queue, and he's got to wait his turn. Aside from the visa expiring and not being renewed, what else would it take to get an A1 diplomatic visa revoked? Well, if Harry has conspired against the U.S. government to overthrow it or damage its form of government, that's grounds for it being revoked, and I think he meets that criteria for undermining our Constitution, but that's just my opinion. Plan to commit crimes? Oh, I'm sure there's some fraud in there with Archewell that we could find. Participate in espionage activities or try to obtain classified information from the country? Well, if he does have some type of diplomatic status and has access to our military and those no-bid government contracts for betterup, just saying. Another avenue is the Secretary of State determining that their presence affects the U.S. government. Yeah, I don't see Blinken doing any of that. Maybe in the next administration, but definitely not this one. Now, on the flip side, the A1 visa is not all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. There are restrictions, and the main one is you cannot have employment authorization. So, if Harry does have one of these A1 visas, then riddle me this. How is he able to be employed by betterup? At this point, I would not be surprised if that too was a lie. Perhaps maybe betterup was being used as a front to mask that he does have this special privilege and doesn't want anybody to know. I mean, anything's possible at this point. I mean, if you really think about it, how much does Harry really do for betterup? You would think he would be all about promoting it on the Sussex.com website, but he doesn't. It's nothing but smoke and mirrors from what I can see. Which brings me to this last curious piece of information. From what I can tell, it looks like to me that Archewell Fugazi Public Charity is no longer registered lawfully as there's no assigned agent. So what does that mean? Delaware law requires every entity to appoint a registered agent with a physical office address in the state of Delaware. If the entity is not physically located in Delaware, they must appoint a registered agent to fulfill the requirement. Registered agents are responsible for accepting service of process as well as providing information for billing and tax obligations to the entities they represent. So I'm sure you must be asking, what happens if you violate this Delaware law? If your Delaware company does not assign a Delaware registered agent for over 30 days, it will be in violation of state law. Noncompliance can lead to the Delaware Secretary of State canceling your company's status. In such cases, you would need to file a certificate of revival to reinstate your company and resume its operations. It is crucial to maintain consistent statutory representation to avoid these serious consequences and ensure your business remains operational and within the bounds of Delaware law. Now, for those that are wondering who is the Delaware Secretary of State, well, that would be Jeffrey W. Bullock. Should you have further questions about this entity that doesn't have a registered agent attached to it per the Delaware law, you may want to reach out and ask what is up with that. Anyhow, that's all I got for you. Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
I was such a fraud.